Welcome back to the Wealth Actually podcast, the show that features experts, entrepreneurs, and commentators that will give you the right knowledge, planning, and guidance so you can preserve your assets and enjoy your wealth. Learn more and subscribe today at wealthactually.com.
This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes. It is neither investment, legal, nor tax advice. It does not represent the opinions of the employers of the host or guest.
Welcome back to the Wealth Actually podcast. I'm Fraser Rice. I get to talk to my friend BLAIR DUQUESNay this time as we talk about politics, New Orleans, and a little bit about what's involved with getting involved. It's a discourse on citizenship and one that I think is important going forward. Welcome aboard, BLAIR.
Thank you for having me. So glad to finally be talking on your podcast.
Well, I'm glad you're on, and it's interesting because we're going to be talking about non-wealth types of things, which would, again, is a non-obvious way for us to get in touch with each other. But via your social medias, I have seen your civic activity down in the New Orleans area, and it's something that is near and dear to my heart, not just New Orleans, but people being involved in their communities. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I think it's interesting, not just sort of the general time constraints and what it takes to do things to help your community out, but we'll talk a little bit about what's happening in the New Orleans area. But maybe help us out, get us started about how you got involved and what we're dealing with here.
Well, my parents set the example for me. They were both involved through various volunteer paths, whether it was organizing the Alumni Association dinner for a university or, running nonprofit boards. Both of my parents set that example. And so I kind of by default have always had the volunteer mindset. And so I was in both the Junior League of New York and also the Junior League of New Orleans, which is a women's organization to train future volunteers. And so you kind of get that training and it just becomes part of who you are. But giving back to a community has always been important to me. And when I moved to New Orleans in 2011, trying to put down roots in a new hometown, I started seeking opportunities to get involved. Obviously, that transfer to the Junior League of New Orleans was a big one. And I became the chair of their Legislative Affairs Committee, which back then was basically coordinating with junior leagues from various cities in Louisiana to set up a day at the Capitol in Baton Rouge. And through that, was introduced to an organization that was formed after Hurricane Katrina called Citizens for One, Greater New Orleans, that was very involved in a lot of the post-Hurricane Katrina good governmental reforms. And fast forward a few years, and I became the chair of that organization. And so that's how my advocacy sort of career began.
Cool. So take us through what the issue is now. I know you've been in front of a lot of different hearings, trying to raise awareness, get organized, and get some things changed that have gone in the wrong direction. Maybe take us through what the issue is.
Yeah. So many people will probably remember that when Hurricane Katrina came through, actually the worst of the storm was to the east of the city of New Orleans. The Mississippi coast really took the brunt of the wind damage. But what happened in New Orleans is our levees failed, and we call that a man-made disaster. And as citizens were starting to return to the city and figure out how to pick up the pieces after 80% of the city had been underwater, we looked up and realized that the governance structure for those levee and flood protection assets was basically staffed with political appointments, friends of the governor. They weren't really required to have any professional engineering background to know what they were looking at as far as maintaining the levees. And citizens demanded a reform, and actually a constitutional amendment was approved in 2006 that sort of solidified this reform of the levee governance system. These are the people who go out and look at hundreds of miles of levees and floodgates and pumps and figure out what do we need to do to maintain these systems and keep them running properly. And so 19 years ago, those reforms were passed. It created a system of levee boards on both sides of the Mississippi River here in New Orleans that were staffed with non-political people who had actual engineering professional expertise in hydrology and floodplain management. And that system has worked for 19 years. Our recent governor, who was elected a couple of years ago, Governor Jeff Landry, has taken a different approach. He would like control of not only these boards, but pretty much all boards across the state, including LSU, the university, the Port of New Orleans. And he has kind of reintroduced this politicized nature back into those boards. So as the organization that was up there in 2006, Citizens for One Greater New Orleans has gone back to Baton Rouge this latest legislative session to try to hold the line as best we can and keep those reforms in place.
And as I understand it, the money we're talking about here, which is usually what ends up being what everybody worries about on this front, is massive. You're talking about billions of dollars in probably state and especially federal aid to make sure that New Orleans is kept up to speed and is able to withstand the next weather hit it takes.
Yeah, so the cost to rebuild the levees in New Orleans, which was done by the Army Corps of Engineers, so basically a free handout from the federal government, was $14.5 billion to rebuild that system. It is the largest and greatest flood protection system in the world, I believe. So it's pretty massive. But maintaining and repairing, we pay local taxes for that. So our property tax has a millage. There's a variety of ways that these entities are funded to the tune of about $60 million a year, which actually, if you do the math, is a small percentage of the overall cost of the levees. So it kind of makes sense. But we pay locally to maintain and repair our levees.
So when did you discover that there was an issue as far as the move from nonpartisan staffing of these boards to more partisan staffing?
About a year ago, there's an independent nominating committee anytime there's a vacancy on one of these boards who will vet their qualifications. Do they live in the right area? Do they meet the civil engineering requirement? They didn't have a lot of applications, but they found one super qualified individual to serve on the board in a vacancy and nominated her, which meant that her name was sent to the governor to be appointed and then confirmed by the Senate to join the board. The governor decided not to appoint her. I guess he wanted more than one option in that instance. She was not appointed. And since then, there's been a series of events that have happened. The legislature in 2024 passed a law that allowed the governor to hand select the chairs of all boards across the state. And so there was an individual who was quickly put on the board of the East Bank Levee Authority and then immediately made president of that board. And if you know anything about board governance, the president has a lot of power there, essentially acting as a direct conduit to the governor, actually through one of his large political donors who has no position in this at all, but yet gives quotes to the local paper about all the ways that they're cleaning up this board. So that's happened. And then quickly after that, within 6 months, we've had 4 of 9 board members resign. All of them in their letters have stated that the authority has taken their eye off of its main mission, which is to stop catastrophic flooding in New Orleans. And so there's a lot of shenanigans going on. In fact, as the legislative session ended last week, that board president was confirmed by the Senate, and another recent addition to the board who had spoken out against some of these political changes was not confirmed. And so now the governor has 1 person on the board and 5 additional vacancies. So that'll be 6 of 9 political appointments. And so as you can imagine, who is going to want to serve on a board at this point, given the politicized nature? So we're basically reverted back to where we were pre-Katrina.
So what are you doing at this point to, A, raise awareness, and then B, sort of organize efforts to try to inject some sanity back into this process?
Yeah, so we're a grassroots, all volunteer, no special interest. I mean, our cost is literally sending out emails and volunteering our own time. So we went up to the legislature. There was a bill that actually was trying to scrap the whole nominating committee process. We went and testified in both the House and the Senate Transportation Committees, asking to restore the right of the boards to select their own chair and not have the governor doing that. We didn't get that amendment. Unfortunately, the situation in Baton Rouge is such that although legislators agree with us that this should be the case, they told us it was political suicide to go against the governor, and we could not get the governor's approval. So testifying in the legislature, sending emails to our list of citizens, posting those on social media, and also submitting op-eds. We just recently submitted an op-ed to the local paper here, the Times-Picayune Advocate. And now that the session has ended, we will be actually going to the monthly boards of the Flood Authority and also of the nominating committee, who will be tasked with refilling those vacancies. So it's an all-volunteer effort, but it's essentially just digging into the issue and keeping on top of it and informing the public of what's going on.
Once you've informed the public and you've got your mailing list, it strikes me one of the things that's important is to maybe expand the mailing list and make sure that more people get informed, because this is one of these issues that, sort of resides in the back pages of the newspaper. And, it's only the ones who are really engaged that look at it and say, geez, we could be looking at a problem shortly. What do you do on that front? It's an all volunteer organization. We've all got day jobs, et cetera. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that is going to be the next focus for us. After Katrina, as you can imagine, people were very engaged civically in a way they've probably never been, and maybe hopefully never will be again, because that was such a crisis. But we were going around collecting petitions and signatures and emails. And that's how our original email list was built, literally hand to paper, person to person, door to door. And so we are going to try to re-broaden our reach by, I don't know, the executive committee has to meet, but whether that will be a series of hosted events to spread the word. But again, just getting out and having those one-to-one conversations in the community with our initial, the people that we know, but then expanding beyond that to other organizations. And so another way to do that is with coalitions. So we're part of several coalitions of groups. One is focused on crime in New Orleans, just getting access to all the different groups, where neighborhood organizations, right? So I think that'll be our next step, is to really reach more people to let them know that we've got a crisis going on.
It's one of these things where just being an active citizen like this is, in my opinion, one of the most important things you can do, and something that I really harp on with my colleagues and the folks that are around me. So I look at what you're doing and I really applaud it. What lessons have you learned from this? Maybe about government, maybe about how people act in group settings, maybe about activism generally. What lessons do you take from it?
My main takeaway is, especially at the local level, democracy works if you're willing to go in and work it. And I know a lot of people don't want to necessarily get in front of senators or state reps and testify and be on camera. That's not everyone has to have that role. And so within a local advocacy organization, your role could be internal, helping draft those communications, helping reach out to other organizations. So just know that there are ways that you can actually get involved and make a difference in your local government. I mean, democracy does actually work if you work it. And sometimes you have to lose the battle to win the war. And so we're on the long game with this one. We did not win in the recent legislative session, but these are people, these are elected officials. They will take meetings with you. They will talk to you. They will engage. And it's actually very invigorating when you get deeply involved in it, as I have, that, this is a thing. It's not just something we read about on the paper or hear on the radio. It's real, and we all have a role to play as citizens.
Have there been any surprises in your efforts, positive or negative, in terms of what you've seen or when you've interacted with people in leadership or amongst the folks that you've dealt with in building the organization?
Yeah, once you meet people that you may have read about or voted for in person and realize that they are human beings too, it is surprising. It's a very different experience than just hearing about them. I think we are very disconnected a lot of times from the people that are up in the legislature, definitely probably on a federal level. But when you actually have a chance to engage with them and build sort of a trust-based relationship with communications, it's pretty powerful. Just the realization that we're all just humans, and a lot of us are getting pushed and pulled in different directions, especially with politics. But at the end of the day, it's really just a conversation, human being to human being.
One of the things I tell people is that even if you aren't particularly happy about what's going on at the presidential level, the elections down ticket are vital. And that, as you go all the way down to dog catcher in your local elections, these are the people in many ways who are in front and have the most effect on you. And I'd be curious to see if you agree with that sentiment and how you think about that going forward, too.
Absolutely. I think all politics is local in a way. And it's really fascinating. I mean, I went this session with almost no contacts because a lot of the original people we were working with have term limited out or have moved on to other positions, and went within a couple of weeks all the way up to meet with the deputy chief of staff of the governor. So you're not that far away, and you can actually make a big impact just by being civically engaged. And it's also important to research the issues as well, because there's a lot of people who go in and testify and just they're complainers. And
Right.
you can tell, like, if you're just going up there to shout and complain at your local school board or city council or state government, they're going to listen to you and be polite, but you're not going to be effective. And so to be effective, you actually have to research the issues and know what you're talking about. But, it is very important not to be completely disengaged. You're only going to get the government that you deserve. And so you've got to work for it sometimes. It's
a sentiment that I hope people who listen to this really take with them. As we part here, what do you think it takes to be a good citizen? This is a concept that I'm really spending a lot of time thinking about for a different project, and I've tried to incorporate that more into my practice from a wealth management and family office governance perspective. What do you see as being important to being a good citizen?
I think the first is to just be educated about how our systems work. I don't think I had a real civics lesson in high school. So just understanding, if you had an idea or a problem that you wanted to bring to your local elected officials, like how would be the best way to engage. And the second is just to care. So many people think there's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to throw my hands up. Actually, you can. So caring and being informed as to how the systems work are probably the two most important factors in being a good citizen. And you have to vote too.
If you don't vote, you don't have in my opinion, you don't have a voice, and you also lose the right to complain.
Exactly.
If you don't participate.
Yes.
How do people stay up to date on your whereabouts, either politically or with your day job?
Yeah. So Citizens for One Greater New Orleans is citizensfor1.com. So if anybody here is local to New Orleans or Southeast Louisiana, please sign up for our email list. I write a blog, The Bell Curve, and my day job is a financial advisor. So now I'm on Substack now, so you can follow me on The Bell Curve, which is BELLE. So a little play on the word Southern Belle. I'm also on Instagram, BLAIR DUQUESNAY, and Instagram as well. It's kind of interesting. I'm so used to all the other social medias, but we're really in flux here. Like X is kind of dying, what used to be Twitter. People aren't using that as much anymore. Blue Sky seems to be taking over that, but I've really just stuck to the blog as my main way of communicating with people.
You're saving valuable time, and I think your efforts are probably a lot better spent doing that. The slippage on useful time I spend on social media is really causing me to have a rethink on all these things. So it's good to hear that. Blair, thanks so much. I think it's a really cool example, and I sort of followed some of the things you were doing on social media to the extent you do it, and it was very impressive. And I encourage anybody who's listening and watching to take a look at what you're doing and maybe incorporate that into their lives as well.
Well, thanks so much for having me to have this conversation and to hopefully inform more people about our issue in New Orleans, but maybe to just have a broader discussion or rethink how they're engaged in their own communities.
Terrific. Thanks, Blair.
Thank you.